When I was 20, I started making music with my friends. I don't know if it was the music that I actually wanted. I think it was more just like the fame and the lifestyle. When we were trying to go out and do music and all these things and realizing that we had no money to accomplish those goals, at the time I started working at Bank of America. And so I went through the whole training procedures and I knew all the different ins and outs pretty much of how the bank works. I could remember the thought very clearly in my head, you could rob a bank. That thought just stayed there, and for 2 months it just went around and around and around, and I thought it out and I planned it out, and I finally one day I decided, hey, things aren't going the way that I wanted to, so I'm gonna go out here and make things happen. March 7th, 2013, I got a BB gun, and I got my stuff together, and I went to the bank.
Somebody in the office apparently got a text message, a alert message. Bremer is on lockdown. The bank has been robbed. And because he told me that he had to go to the bank, I immediately thought, wow, let me text him to see if he's okay. And he responded. He said, yeah, I'm fine, Dad. I'm home. And I said, okay. And that was the end of it.
My mom was asleep in the room, but she was asleep, so I was like, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna go buy a safe. That's when the police pulled me over, and they stopped me, and I got out of the car, and they said, hey, we're pursuing any suspects in a bank robbery.
My mother called me saying that Jules had been arrested. It was horrible. It was the worst feeling you could ever imagine. And I didn't understand why they were here. Because in my mind, my brother could have never done anything like this.
I really kind of had a nonchalant attitude because I guess I didn't really understand the proportions that my actions really had on everybody other than myself. April 20th is National Weed Day, and that's really all I wanted to go home for, so I could be with my friends and have fun. So at that time, it really didn't hit me, it didn't strike me, I didn't feel. I just thought that it was a passing moment, that everything would be fine and that I'd go home and it would all just blow over. It was sometime in April, and I went to my preliminary hearing, and when I was in the bullpen, which is the cell that you wait in before you go into court, all these guys were talking about the Mind Dorm. And they were talking about, it's this program, you get a certificate, and it looks good for the judges, and you get to talk to people, and there's a microwave in there. I was like, it kind of seems good for all around, that I get to go and you learn something. I get a microwave, and I get to be more practical with my time.
I think in the initial stages that Jules may not have had the right motivations in coming to the program, but as he sat and began to absorb what is being taught in that program, he began to ask questions, and he began to associate himself with others in the program that were far more focused and diligent in spiritual matters. And you could see in him that there was, what was being provoked in him was a hunger for the things of God.
I'm listening to the teachers, they're like, don't just believe us, read it for yourself. And I was like, well, I've never read the Bible before. And so I was like, hey, Mom, I called her up, and I was like, hey, Mom, I would like to get this Bible. And so she bought it for me, and she sent it in, and I started reading it, and that's where it all began. As I continued to read on and I got to the book of Acts, that's kind of where everything just really opened up for me, and I was like, where have I been all my life? I don't even know what I was doing, why I was doing it, who I was doing it for, but everything was just different. And I realized that I couldn't live my life the way that I was, and that I had to make a change, and that I was in the perfect spot to make a change. And so I was just excited to continue to read, and it really just happened in an instant. But I knew in that instant that, Jesus was God, Jesus had a plan for me, and I just wholly trusted in that. There were about 4 different guys that would come in from the Life Church that would come in and speak to us and teach us. And I'm absolutely thankful for the role that the Life Church had to play in just teaching me who God is. I had a decision. I actually could have gone home, attempted to go home and be on house arrest. They asked me to be mentor, and I felt like God was saying, hey, you have a decision to make. And so I chose to stay and be the mentor because I felt like it was what God was telling me to do. And since I felt like it was the first thing that God had ever told me to do, I was like, I'm gonna do it. And so I did it. And it was probably the best, I think it is the best decision that I've ever made.
he was actually instructing the older inmates. There were men that were twice his age that he would reach out to, and it was incredible.
And that's where I realized that I believe, I've been called to be a pastor.
I generally do not write letters for inmates.
And he sat me down and we talked, and he actually handed me a manila envelope, and it had a letter of recommendation in it.
When you see a change that it is that profound, writing a letter became just a natural affirmation and to acknowledge what God had done in his life.
And I was looking at 20 years for a robbery charge and 3 years mandatory for a firearm in the commission of a felony. And I was just waiting to hear what number the judge was gonna say. I had already been incarcerated for 22 months. The average would have been about 8 years, and so that would have been perfectly normal, but he decided to go with half of that, which is 4. So August 31st, 2016, that was an amazing day. It was the day I got released and came home.
An incredible story of God's grace and God's deliverance and God's using a vessel that had been broken, that God restored in a powerful, powerful way.
So since I've been out, I have a full-time job. I work at Honda Chantilly. I've served on the welcome team, and I serve on the setup crew for the Bristol campus, which I'm really excited about. I also co-lead a Bible study with Tony on Wednesday nights, and I've just been staying proactive in my daily activities to move forward in what I feel God has for me. Going through the whole process that I went through, I was kind of just drifting through life. Beforehand, I thought I knew what I wanted, but I was dead inside. There was no power in my life. There was only things that had power over me, and I didn't see it that way at that time, but God showed me that He could breathe life into you. Life is so much more than myself. Life is so much more than just about the things that I want. Life is just amazing, and there's so much more to do, and there's so much more people to help than what I had in my mind and the things that I wanted to do as far as like money and all these crazy things. There's just so much more.